I can't believe it, they've really been listening. Just moments ago, the developers of Diablo 4 released a new Blizzard blog post detailing the insights and changes that have emerged from the beta phase. We're talking about feedback and adjustments that will actually make it into the final game upon its launch on June 6th. So without further ado, let's dive into what the team has put together and see what updates we can expect. First and foremost on the agenda is feedback concerning dungeons. In the blog post it says, one of the most common pieces of feedback we received is that players felt they were doing a lot of backtracking within certain dungeons. We have optimized multiple dungeons across all zones to minimize the need for backtracking. And here you can see a list of the dungeons in the Fractured Peaks alone that have received some changes. But the team goes on and says, our primary goal with the layout changes was to reduce certain kinds of backtracking which detract from a player's experience. An example of this change is that players previously needed to enter side rooms to interact with structure objectives, causing them to retread the same path. Now, many of our structure objectives have been repositioned along main dungeon pathways, making them easier for players to reach and allowing them to readily explore the dungeon after defeating the structure. But there have been even more changes to dungeons. The chance for an event to spawn inside of a dungeon has increased from 10% to 60%. To reduce the need to backtrack, small numbers of straggling monsters will seek out the player to help complete the Kill All Monsters objective. When Animus is gathered, the player and nearby allies will gain 10 resource and reduce all active cooldowns by 1 second. Depositing Animus channel time was reduced from 3 to 0 seconds. The time to rescue was reduced from 3 to 1.5 seconds. All rescue objectives now drop a health potion upon completion. While carrying the ancient statue, bloodstone, mechanical box or stone carving, you will receive a momentum bonus granting a 25% move speed increase to you and nearby allies. Pedestals have had their channel time reduced from 2 to 0 seconds. Returning a portable object to its pedestal now fully restores health, resource, potions and resets cooldowns for all nearby players. All doors will now generate a minimap ping when they are opened. All structure objectives in dungeons now have additional combat mechanics players must overcome. Also, the devs explain why these changes have been made. While our dungeons offer a variety of objectives to complete, player feedback stated that the action of completing each objective felt tedious. We hope that providing bonuses, such as the increase to mobility while carrying certain objective items, will streamline and vary the experience of completing objectives. This adjustment is merely a starting point and we intend to extend this philosophy to keys in a future update. If you ask me, these are some fantastic changes and I'm truly amazed at how quickly and effectively the team has responded. I'm also looking forward to seeing how dungeons might continue to evolve even after the game's release. But what do you think? Are those changes to dungeons a W or not so much? Let me know in the comments down below. Next up are changes and tweaks to the classes. General changes that affect all classes include effects like stun and freeze can be applied to elite monsters twice as long before they become unstoppable. Reviewed class skills to confirm that all classes have access to sufficient skills that remove control impairing effects. Many legendary powers have had updates to their effectiveness. I'm especially curious about the last note about the legendary powers, but unfortunately there aren't any additional information. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out come release. In addition, each class has received very specific balance adjustments, starting with the Barbarian. A flat 10% passive damage reduction has been added for the Barbarian class. Some skill tree passives had their damage reduction effects reduced to compensate. The Whirlwind skill now deals more damage, but also consumes more fury. The Double Swing skill enhancement refunds its full fury cost when used on stunned or knocked down enemies. The Druid has been significantly buffed. Companion skills will now deal heavily increased damage. All ultimate skills have had their cooldowns reduced. Usability improvements have been made to maul and pulverize. Using a non-shapeshifting skill will transform a druid back to their human form. The Necromancer received expected adjustments. Summoned minions will die more often, requiring players to utilize corpses more often. Many bonuses in the Book of the Dead have had their stats increased. The damage dealt by the corpse explosion skill has been reduced. And thankfully, the brightness of the skeletal warriors and mages has also been reduced. The rogue has received a reasonable combination of buffs and nerfs. Upgrades for subterfuge skills have had their bonuses increased. Multiple passive skills have had their bonuses increased too. All imbuement skills, however, have had their cooldowns increased. And the sorcerer also had some adjustments, although I'm surprised I couldn't find anything about the Hydra. Charged bolts damage was increased and the mana cost to cast has decreased. Decreased the damage of chain lightning and reduced its effectiveness against bosses. Decreased the cooldown for the incinerate skills enchantment bonus. Firewalls will now spawn underneath enemies more frequently when using its enchantment bonus. Increased the lucky hit chance for the meteor skills enchantment bonus. Here's also a quick note from the devs on the class balance adjustments. Whenever we introduce changes to our classes, it is the goal of making both them and their skills feel impactful and powerful. Your feedback has helped us uphold this ideal. Some players have adeptly noticed that certain skills were too powerful. One of our goals for skills is to have them be interesting to wield and interactive in terms of itemization and combat feel. We've made some changes to help in this regard, with one example being the Necromancer's minions. We've made a change that makes them more vulnerable in combat, which will make raising the dead a more active component of the Necromancer's gameplay. Launch is just the first step of our class balance journey, and you can expect further updates that iterate on this pillar of Diablo 4. I find these changes really good. Clearly overpowered abilities such as the Necromancer's corpse explosion or the Sorcerer's chain lightning have been toned down, while others have received a slight buff. It sounds reasonable on paper, but we'll see how it plays out upon release. Balance adjustments are a never-ending story in looters and RPGs. I was particularly excited about the next part of the blog post, which deals with the changes to the UI. Unfortunately, it turned out rather disappointing. As expected, nothing fundamental is changing about the UI. Here are the patch notes though. Fixed an issue where the built-in screen reader was not reading key prompts, game option details and other UI text. Fixed an issue where actions could not be bound to the mouse wheel. Fixed an issue where evade couldn't be bound to the right analog stick on controller. Chat will now display on the left side of the screen when using the centered action bar configuration. A character's stats will be displayed by default when players click the Materials and Stats button within their inventory. The move and interact inputs can now be mapped to one button, while the primary attack input is mapped to a secondary button. The sans serif font used in-game has been replaced with a new serif font. My highlights in the patch notes for the UI are definitely that you're now able to bind mouse wheel, that your character stats are shown right away, and that we get a new font that fits more the overall theme of Diablo. But all in all, I really hoped for more in this area. The next point, however, is quite good. It's all about battles and bosses in Sanctuary. Fixed multiple issues that allowed bosses like the Butcher to become unresponsive. The Butcher has been re-evaluated for difficulty and will present a greater challenge in World Tiers 3 and 4. Bosses such as T'Chort, Malnok, Venard and others were re-evaluated for melee character difficulty, resulting in changes to attacks and fight mechanics. And fixed an issue where vampire brutes using the Shadow Enchant affix would chaincast Impale. The Cellars, which were hardly played or farmed in the beta, are also getting a small but very good adjustment. They increased the chance for a dungeon event to occur in Cellars. Cellars will now also consistently reward a chest upon completion. They fixed an issue where cellars would prematurely be marked as complete, and they also fixed an issue where the guaranteed elite monster would be absent from a cellar. I think these are good changes across the board. And then there are a few general quality of life adjustments as well. They fixed an issue where players could increase attack speed by move cancelling attacks early. I'm glad they fixed this glitch. They also fixed an issue where characters weren't immune and untargetable after loading into an area. The reset dungeon button has also been disabled. And they fixed an issue that caused Gale Valley and Serag Rapture to have less monsters than intended until the campaign quests in those territories were completed. Those are all pretty good changes, but it's clear that the ability to repeatedly farm dungeons has been taken away from us. I'm curious how this will be handled in the finished game. I assume that dungeons can only be reset with nightmare sigils, or perhaps after a certain cooldown, a global reset or something similar. But I'm truly astonished at how much feedback has been evaluated and actually implemented. I had only expected a few minor adjustments before the game's release. But we also received an exact time for the endgame dev livestream on April 20th. You can watch it live at 11 AM PDT. And if you'd rather see a summary or hear my opinion on it, be sure to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and check out my latest video displayed here on the screen, as I'm sure you'll love it as well. I wish you all an awesome day and I'll catch you in the next one.